So good afternoon, Alex. Great to catch up with you again. There's so much going on this year. I feel like it's a dichotomy in our industry between excitement and anxiety. But it'd be great to hear a bit more from you. We've heard from you a lot in the past with your growth of Celonis and your infiltration into workflow platforms and process intelligence. But the shiny new objects that seemed to hit the whole industry flat-footed last November was GenAI, and there's been a huge amount of activity and noise around this, obviously, since then. But I'd love to hear a bit more about, from your perspective, on did this surprise you, and maybe a little bit about, is this something we should be enthusiastic and excited about, or is this something we should be a little scared of?
Well, first of all, I think it surprised all of us in terms of the adoption cycle with ChatGPT. I mean, we played around with those things before, and we incorporated a lot of AI into our product for years. But I think what ChatGPT really took the GPT model. GPT-3 was much better than GPT-2. I still remember playing around GPT-2, being quite impressed. But GPT-3 was obviously much better, and then 3.5 and then 4. And obviously, they created a UI for it that everybody could use. So then, everybody started, it really started, I think, to jumpstart the adoption cycle of generative AI for both consumers, but also businesses. So I think that certainly came as a surprise to many of us, not as a sort of surprise. Okay, we never thought this would happen, but I think how it happened came as a surprise. And I think generally we should be excited about it.
But where do you think we're going to see some initial immediate value and maybe longer term value with this?
Yeah, I think the first layer that is really going to change pretty dramatically is the user interface, right? So what humans engage with, how they engage with computers, right? We for a long time have had different paradigms for automating user interfaces more, making them easier to use, making sort of workflows and automation better. And a lot of that will just be generated on the fly, right? According to process context and intelligence. And that's really, really exciting because you can, generate entire workflows on the fly. You can generate apps on the fly, right? You can, you can automate much more. Think about user interfaces that allow us access to insights. We'll just be able to have conversations about insights, which will really make them accessible to many more people. We already have this working at Celonis, and are taking the next step. That's in the first versions we see with real users. It's really quite exciting and a real breakthrough in terms of transforming the insights that we can, how we can provide insights to people and to how many people we can provide it. So I think really the whole space of automation and how software companies build user interfaces, which are very related, obviously, is going to be transformed. And it's going to unlock productivity. It's going to make people better. It's going to accelerate human accomplishment and make businesses have a real impact on businesses.
So do you see we've finally reached an inflection point where enterprises have no choice but to make a lot of difficult, maybe complex changes to their infrastructures, their data, their processes to actually exploit this?
If you take current infrastructures without Celonis and then the AI models, so the LLMs, more specifically, because is what we can really provide is a unified and horizontal process data language and taxonomy that can be exposed to these AI models. And that is really, really exciting because you can just plug in the AI model and they can just, in one language, in one system, get context about many processes in the company and even how those processes relate to each other. And that is a huge unlock, right? Because when you think about AI, like AI is really good at generating code. Like it's much better at generating code than it is at, many other problems, right? Why? Because code already has a structured grammar and language for writing computer programs, right? And when you give it sort of that constrained space of how to express things, then it gets much better. And you give a lot of examples. It gets really, really good at helping you to solve more complex problems. And the same is true for Celonis plus AI in business processes, because we can provide that common process intelligence layer. So we are working with a large bank and one of our big SI partners at the moment. And the bank really wants to build an LLM-powered customer service interface, so customer chatbot, basically, that's very intelligent, right? And it's kind of really explains well what I tried to describe earlier with the process intelligence layer, right? Because now the chatbot needs to know a lot of things about the process, right? Like just GPT is not good enough, right? Because it can answer everything that's on the internet, but it can't answer where's your order, because it doesn't know where the order is, right? It can't answer about when is the order going to arrive. It can't answer how do I open my bank account here. It can't answer those questions because it lacks the context of that specific business. So now they could try to sort of harmonize data from many different systems and feed them into the chatbot and try to explain them all this process context. Or they already have Celonis deployed across many of those processes along the customer journey. We know where the orders are and where, how to open accounts and how well we served that specific customer in the past, and we just expose this process context to the front office. And that way the chatbot is implemented much faster and it's much better because it has all this process context. It doesn't just know how the process works, it also knows how long it takes, how long it took for that specific customer, where the current requests are stuck, right? Who's usually working with them. So it has a lot more context about the business processes in that company, and that becomes a critical enabler of making these things really work beyond science projects within large businesses.
How's GenAI changing the types of companies that you're needing to partner with when we see, firms coming into play, like obviously Llama, Hugging Face, some of these businesses?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and ultimately, we're going to enable whatever the customer wants to use, right? There's different reasons to choose any one of those models that you just mentioned. I think the interesting thing for us is then there's a whole host of other companies that build on top of that infrastructure, that either train models for specific purposes or fine-tune them, or build AI and AI native apps for specific use cases.
So, I'm going to put you on the spot a little here, but how big is this? Is this like as big as the internet? Is this more like the steam engine? Is this something maybe once the noise dies down, a good tool for getting a bit smarter and slicker at things? What's your overall assessment for the general impact of GenAI?
So I'm going to be controversial, and I don't think anybody could give like 100-year view here, because we don't know how much this is going to evolve. And obviously, if we really evolve into AGI, that might change all of those predictions. But I think in the current form, obviously foreseeing some advancements, I think it's somewhere around like the internet. Maybe a little bit different, right? But it's bigger than mobile for sure, right? You could argue is it as big as the internet, or as big as mobile? It has some similarities to mobile because it changes the user interface, but it does that in a more fundamental way, right? So I think it's going to be more comparable to the internet. I don't think it's the steam engine.
How does this, in a nutshell, impact, do you think, your world of process intelligence? Is this going to really move you to a different place, or do you think this is a more gradual step change as you start to absorb its potential?
Well, I think it creates this new layer at which we can. And first of all, we are embedding AI in many GenAI, and we have embedded AI models for many years in many steps of how we build our product and in our core product. So it just makes it accelerates sort of the speed of innovation and time to value within our core system. That's really important. The second thing is it really puts process intelligence at the heart as the engagement layer to make AI work in your enterprise. That is really important. When you look at the current GenAI implementations, there's some really exciting momentum, but there's also a lot of science projects, and they don't really drive business value yet. In order to drive business value, you need to quickly be able to connect these AI models with process context and process intelligence. So it really accelerates it, and we believe very, very, very quickly and very deeply the importance of a process intelligence layer in your enterprise. In order to make AI work, you need AI that knows how your business flows, and that's what Celonis enables.
Wonderful. Well, I really appreciate your thoughts on this, Alex. It's always good catching up with you. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Take care.